Retail media networks want brand dollars. That is not new or surprising. What's new is the growing realization that the barrier may not be a lack of demand or a lack of capability, it's that many brands are structurally incapable of spending those dollars through retail media, even when they want to. On a recent LinkedIn Live, I sat down with Jordan Whitmer, who leads retail media strategy at the agency Salt XC. And we talked about what actually happens when retail media networks come calling for brand marketing budgets. Jordan spent years on the big CPG side before moving over to the agency side, so he has seen this from every angle. The conversation really kicked into gear when we got into the internal dynamics on the brand side. Jordan made the point that you can predict almost everything about how a brand will evaluate retail media based on a single variable: who owns the budget? Let's jump in.
It's not 100% accurate, but you get a really strong leading indicator of what a brand wants out of their retail media investment based on who's picking up the phone and who owns that budget and who gets to say yes and no.
Mm.
We often see, yeah, if you, to your point, if you're working with a sales team or a shopper team that's gold on one thing, then yeah, you're gonna get, I want return on ad spend, I want incremental lift at that retailer, I want all the things that we've been asking you for here. And what you're not gonna get is really anything that helps you go prove that you're a legitimate brand player as a media
Mm.
network. You also get this friction if you move the media team in and they run off their playbooks, and you start to get these weird conversations of, wait, but if we're going to run streaming that goes everywhere, and that's now part of my JVP, that's not helping me deliver my business at
Mm.
Target, right?
Right.
And every retailer that tunes in, I'm picking your names at random. I think they've got to do what they're really uncomfortable doing, which is making fast, decisive decisions about what they want.
Mm.
The number of briefs that I have seen in both in my own experience, agency side, brand side, from friends and peers, and that say your brief is to build awareness and drive sales.
Easy. Yep.
Yeah, cool, got it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why we all have jobs. But yeah,
Yep.
great.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but how? How much?
Uh-huh.
Which one? What are you
Yep.
actually going to judge this on? Prepping for that conversation and being really clear and trying to get some of the, let's call it emotional or personal barriers out of those conversations at brands is step one.
Build awareness and drive sales. Ugh, if only those of us who've spent time in agency land could have a dollar for every time we've heard that. And this is exactly the kind of ambiguity that produces what Jordan later called Franken campaigns, stitched together plans trying to satisfy incompatible goals. Miracle Ads is the ad tech solution trusted by Rakuten and over 50 global enterprise retailers. That's because Miracle Ads was built with both 3P marketplace sellers and 1P suppliers in mind. Both advertiser audiences demand a seamless advertising journey from onboarding to reporting. You can offer everything from sponsored products to video ads all in one solution. Learn more at miracle.com. That's MIRAKL.com. Now let's move on to talk about reporting. One of the most useful frameworks from the conversation came when we unpacked what credible reporting actually means. It really depends on who's asking. This was sparked by a LinkedIn post from Catherine Mazza, who formerly head up Hy-Vee's retail media network, and she talked about what it takes for RMNs to unlock brand dollars.
She talks about the foundation built on what matters. That flow into, what does credible reporting mean and useful reporting mean when you, I don't want to say graduate, but you move between being a group that services a sales team that is singular retailer focused to a brand organization that wants to drive everything everywhere, the definition of credible reporting changes completely.
Okay.
From, is your reporting credible enough to prove that the dollars I put into Hy-Vee drove growth at Hy-Vee, to the dollars that I put in at Hy-Vee drove growth across the country, are two very different asks of a reporting team.
Yep.
And uh, we could talk more about it later, but I don't know how reasonable it is to ask an RMN to answer the second question.
Well, this is where we were talking before we started recording about data clean rooms and retailers and commerce media networks actually collaborating. I think that's where it happens. But
Absolutely.
it seems to me like it's a bit of a taboo right now to be talking about collaborating because everyone is still kind of like, I want to keep this to myself. But I think from what you're saying, it would be a more powerful asset to a brand team if retailers and commerce media networks did start collaborating.
Absolutely. I think if I continue down that set of questions and you start to change around some of the inputs, and instead of talking retail, we just go look at who's done a good job of cementing themselves inside of brand budgets because they produce the outcomes that brands are looking to produce. And we'll pick on Meta for a second. And if we put, did Hy-Vee money drive Hy-Vee impact? Did Meta drive Meta impact? Well, Meta impact's not a thing. I mean, sure, there's a certain amount of
Right.
sales that are happening direct to platform, but largely you're not asking that question anymore when you start to
Yeah.
be, I'm a brand mass market media publisher, versus a retail network. So the natural question that flows out of that is, what do you look at for Meta? If they're not doing the credible reporting that retailers do, what do they do? How did they get here? And if you dive into that, they've made a lot of the data easier to access over time that
Uh,
flows out into brand
mm.
organizations and third-party measurement partners that
This is a big insight because it explains why retail media can feel completely persuasive in one meeting and completely inadequate in another. The friction isn't a lack of data, it's mismatched expectations about what the data is supposed to prove. A shopper marketing team and a brand marketing team will look at the exact same reporting package and reach opposite conclusions about whether it's credible. Jordan's meta comparison is sharp too. Meta doesn't prove it drove sales at any specific retailer. It made its data accessible enough for third-party measurement partners and media mix models to pick up the signal. That's the model RMN should move forward with if they want brand budgets. Not better closed-loop attribution, but more open data that plugs into how brand teams already measure. I have a few more great tidbits in the article that accompanies this podcast today, getting deeper into this topic, but we're going to need to wrap it up here pretty soon. The takeaway here is that the industry often frames this as a supply side problem. Retail media networks need better brand products, they need better measurement, they need better agency relationships. Those things might all be true, but this conversation today also makes it clear that it's equally a demand side problem. Brands need to decide what they're buying before they can evaluate whether retail media actually delivers it. If the sales team owns the budget, retail media will be evaluated as a sales tool. If the brand team owns it, it'll be measured against awareness benchmarks. And if both teams share the room without resolving whose goals matter more, you'll get franking campaigns that satisfy nobody. If you want to check out the full live stream with me and Jordan, I'll link up to it in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week.